Denver Sports presents the Mile High Hockey Podcast with Mike Evans, presented by Fort Comfort Gutters. Now here's your host with the latest on the Burgundy and Blue, Mike Evans.
Hey everyone, welcome in for the final Mile High Hockey Podcast of the season. Done a lot earlier than we thought we would be, especially after the Winnipeg series, especially after game one of this Dallas series. Joining me, as he has throughout the course of the year, it's my pal, Matt Smith, who I always enjoy breaking it all down with. So just kind of your immediate reaction, emotions following the loss to Dallas. How do you kind of process this series?
Gosh, compared to when you and I were in here last to talk about it, feels a lot different. Coming off the Winnipeg series, riding high on the offensive output, scored 28 goals in 5 games. You know, one of the best 5-game performances in a series in NHL history, and then you bounce back against Dallas and kind of come back down to earth. Somewhat tough to reconcile. Because at first I didn't think Dallas was that much better than Winnipeg. I think that's probably what surprised me the most about this series. Winnipeg was the best defensive team in hockey during the regular season. I think they were the only team not to allow 200 or more goals. They had the eventual, most likely Vezina winner in Connor Hellebuck. So if you were able to take a defensive team and play your game and play to your identity to such an extent that you handled them in what felt relatively in easy 5 games, then yeah, you should easily be able to bring that type of a fight against Dallas. But Dallas, man, I think they got better, first of all, from the first series to the second series. I think it also probably says something about how good Vegas actually probably was in that first round. But they were able to take the Avs out of their game more than I thought that they would be able to. Now, their defensive structure, man, those Pete DeBoer teams, they kind of all play the same. They're nasty to play against. They always play tight to the house, so it's hard to get to the inside. And that Dallas team forced the Avs to the outside. They limited their rush chances. And I thought they forced Colorado to be the ones that had to adjust versus the other way around, which if you're in that seat, you're in the driver's seat, and that's where Dallas found themselves. And then, of course, the Nichushkin news was, gut punch. They just didn't have enough, I don't think, and couldn't convert to the level they needed to get it done without him. So here we go into another offseason.
Yeah, I when a series ends like this, I try to look at it one of two ways. Either was it obvious to me that they ran up against a better team, or was there elements of the way that the Avalanche played that I felt like they underachieved? And that's always a tough one. I think in the final analysis for me, I felt like the Avalanche underachieved in this series. I know that Dallas was a better team than Winnipeg. You could just see it, you could feel it. But I felt that what the Avalanche, their top players were capable of, I thought they could have given more and they didn't. I thought Nathan MacKinnon could have given more. I thought that Mikko Rantenen could have given more. Artturi Lehkonen was a shell of the player that he was in the Winnipeg series. So I thought that there was another gear to this team, and I know that the Val absence and the way he left was a huge part of it. I just can't blame the entire loss on losing Val. Game 4, absolutely. That's a gut punch. You find out just a couple hours before the game that he's not going to play, and then to go out and play that way, it was directly attributable to losing Val. But the next game, on the road, down 3-1, they came back from 1-0 down. They came back from 2-1 down, and then they totally outplayed Dallas in the third period to win that game, Game 5 on the road. That performance to me showed, okay, losing Val hurts, but it doesn't need to be crippling. And that is my biggest takeaway from the series is that, yes, losing Val hurt, but there was still a level of underachievement from the Avs' top guys that I look at as to why they lost this series.
Yeah, I think when they went down for Game 5, there was a sense I had that, okay, I think they could get it done. I think they get one done because the night before they did that, Boston did the same thing. Yep. Boston beat Florida on the road in Game 1, lost the next 3, then went back to Sunrise and won in Game 5. And that was the night before Colorado and Dallas in Game 5. And I said, well, hey, look, the Bruins without Brad Marchand just did it. So you've got Nathan MacKinnon and cale makar. You should be able to do it too. And they did. But my question was, could you do it once? Or could you do it 3 more times? Because at that stage, you're down 3-1, and you got to win 3 in a row to win that series. And it turns out they could do it once. Now, they fought, though. They fought in Game 6, and, it's not much of a moral victory. But I think it's a better note at a bare minimum to end on than it would have been going down in a 3-0 hole like you did in Game 1 or a 4-0 hole like you did in Game 2, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
A loss is a loss, but I think at least you showed yourself that you had some fight, because next year you already know you're going to have to be without him a little bit. But
I'm not really. So you and I disagree a little bit on this. I'm not really interested in the moral victory that comes with, well, at least we fought hard. And Bednar was talking about after they got eliminated, hey, I'm proud of the way we competed. This Avalanche team is in a window right now where it's Stanley Cup or bust for me. And with the core players they have, and then the additions that they made at the trade deadline, which we all agreed looked good on paper, and through the first round against Winnipeg, we saw a lot of those supporting players play well. We right here on this show made the distinction between, look at what the supporting cast did in this series against Winnipeg versus last year against Seattle. It was stark in the difference, but you didn't get those contributions in the second round in this series. And so when I look at the core players that they have, and then the supporting cast that they put together that looked good, that had a lot of us feeling pretty good about their chances, the fact that there was an underperformance from both their best players and a lot of their supporting players, that's what leaves me feeling kind of hollow about this series. And I don't really come away saying, well, they played hard. I mean, this stage of the Stanley Cup playoffs, one thing that is obvious to me as a hockey fan that I have so much respect for hockey than I do that I see a lot of times in basketball. Hockey, these guys just go. It is 100 miles per hour, no breaks. And so everybody's playing hard. Everybody's laying it on the line. Everybody's playing with courage and guts. So I don't think that the Avalanche should be saluted when they lose in the second round, when we had such high expectations for them, by saying, well, at least they played hard. To me, that's the expectation. Now, what's on top of that? And that's where I'm left with the feeling of underachievement.
Yeah, and I think for me, I never had the high expectations until after the Winnipeg series.
You didn't, and I want to bring this up because on this show, when we were talking about the trade deadline, both the upcoming trade deadline,
in January,
when we were talking about the upcoming trade deadline, and even after the trade deadline, you said you didn't feel it with this group, and if anything, you would have punted on the season, rather than go out and make the moves that they made.
And the reason why is because I didn't think that even with those moves they made, they were going to have enough, and it was going to be impossible to sell the fans. The fans were going to be mad at you, but I thought. And I think maybe it would have been unfair for MacKinnon and Rantenen, guys who have been, laying it all out on the line, not to get them help. I would have gotten help. I just wouldn't have gotten them that much where I had to give up Byram and a first, maybe. I would have looked at Adam Henrique or Alex Wenberg and maybe said, okay, I know, by the way, this guy isn't going to be what we need, but it's something. And those guys deserve something, but it's not so much where now I'm going to waste a bunch of assets, because Bednar even spoke about this post-game the other night. He even talked about, hey, you only have so many assets and so many bullets you can fire. And the Avs fired some of their biggest assets, whereas, maybe you lose in the first round, but you enter the summer with Byram you can move, an extra first you can move, and you do go big game hunting. That was my philosophy. It was impossible to sell. And a lot of people didn't agree with it, but I still feel that way.
Do you
convicted in where I felt?
Do you think that Casey Mittelstadt can eventually be the answer at 2C? I think what we learned this year, the bold proclamations from a lot of folks that we heard after the Mittelstadt deal, was they found their second line center. Like there was this feeling of certainty. We got our second line center. I was always like, whoa. This guy's never played in the playoffs before. Let's see what happens before we proclaim him to be the answer. Right now, I'd say the jury's still out. But do you feel confident that with a full off season, training camp, and then a full regular season to look forward to, that this guy will settle in and eventually be your clear-cut answer at 2C? Because if that's the case, then then maybe the move was worth it.
Yeah, I don't feel that way.
You don't feel that way.
No.
You just don't see it.
No, he doesn't, because he's not dynamic enough of a player. He's got really good hands. And I think he's got a good attitude, but he's not dynamic enough of a player to be a second-line driver. I think you almost need a 1C as your 2C nowadays to get it done. Like,
if you're going to win a cup. If you're going to win a cup. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and Casey, I just felt like, and maybe it changes, but here's where I'm coming from. Do I think he's going to get faster? Not really. I think he can get a little bit stronger. I think he can get a little sharper. But I remember talking about him when we brought it up in the Deadline show, that I thought he was just another version of a Compher. You're going to look a lot like that. And I kind of feel justified in that feeling now. Now, I gave him a ton of credit after the Winnipeg series, because if you could get that version of him every night, then maybe. Because he had 6 points in 5 games, and I thought he himself was paramount into generating chances for other guys. Like, there were some slot feeds to Lehkonen, who's cutting down, stuff that Johansson didn't do, plays where you are generating chances where a chance may not have been generated otherwise. But that's only part of it. You've got to be a driver on the rush. You got to be able to push the pace. If you want to play with the Avs, you've got to play at that speed. So I'm not saying that it'll never happen. I don't think it will. And I think that probably hampers them moving forward. Now, the good news, to an extent, is because he's a restricted free agent, you don't have to give him a 5-year contract this offseason. They'll give him a bridge deal of about $5 million or so, and hopefully there's no snags, because he wouldn't sign that bridge deal in Buffalo, because Buffalo didn't want to give him as much money as he felt he was worth in the arbitration process. At least that's how I understand it. So I think they're going to end up having to do that. Byram's money probably just goes to Mittelstadt. Now, the question that you get typically after that was, well, if not him, who? And the answer is there really isn't a good clear-cut answer right now. The UFA market doesn't look great, but I think you probably would have tried to get creative with trades. The point is that they went for it, and it didn't work.
What do you do now going into an offseason in which your 2 biggest question marks are 2 of your biggest cap hits? Mm-hmm. Gabe Landeskog and Valeri Nichushkin. How do you go about making moves this offseason? One, knowing that Val will likely be reinstated.
Whoa, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he will be.
I don't know.
But, all right, the reason I say that is because the Players Association and the NHL agreed on basically a 4-strike and you're out player assistance program.
More or less.
The fact that he's at strike 3.
We can operate from the assumption that he'll be reinstated.
Let's do that, okay? I think he will be. Yeah. So let's say you go through this offseason knowing that you can start with him on LTIR.
Can't do that. He's not on LTIR. That's the problem. You don't spend that money. He stays on your books, and you have to have 6.1 open. That's why this summer building a team is going to be really hard.
You can't. I thought he's not on LTIR. Everything I've read is he is. He's not.
Gabe was,
yes,
but Val's not.
He can't be put on LTIR.
Have to have 6.1 open. That's why it's such a disaster.
Why can't he be on LTIR?
That's just the way the program works.
Okay. So how do you, all right, well now if that's the case, so now you're dealing with 2 issues. You're dealing with one, you got a $6 million cap.
That's just dead on your
That's
books.
Just dead.
Yeah.
You just got to work around that.
Yeah. Until at least November when he can apply
come
for
back, right.
reinstatement.
Then you got Gabe, where the expectation is he's going to come back, but he hasn't played hockey in 2 years. And we all hope and are expecting him to give it a shot. But for him to have missed 2 years of hockey with a surgery that is completely unproven when it comes to professional athletes coming back from, how do you go out and build? And how do you build your hockey team around those 2 big unknowns?
Did you see Lonzo Ball, the video that he just posted? He posted his first video dunking. And Lonzo Ball, obviously, right, plays for the Bulls,
right,
going through the same knee cartilage transplant surgery that Gabe did. And, okay, maybe it was his first dunk, and maybe he'll get better, but my first thought was, oh, man, he's never going to be the same. Lonzo. So what does Gabe look like? And now you've got to figure out how to deal with the cap hit of Val, and hopefully he does put in the work to get back on the ice. And, you hear people go, well, trade him. Well, if you trade him, you're most likely going to incur a dead cap hit anyway because you're not going to get equal value in return for him unless you move him for an expiring contract. And if you do that, you give up, when healthy, as one of the most dominant players in the NHL, truthfully.
Well, if there's a team out there looking, if a team's out there looking to trade for Val, they're going to say, "Hey, look, you're going to have to eat some of the salary."
Yeah, so and why would you want to give away such a dominant player for that?
And you're not going to give up. You're not going to get a whole lot of return for him either.
Well, to the fan who says, "Well, buy him out, cut him, get rid of him," because how could you bring him back in the locker room? Oh, so you want a $6 million to $5 million to $4.5 million dead cap hit the next 3 years in the middle of a contending window in a hard cap sport? Best of luck contending that.
But the other way of looking at it is if you have so many people out there, and I understand where you're coming from, folks, where you say, hey, this is 2 years in a row that Val's the reason that we went out early, well, then I would ask you, how in the world can you bring Val back?
Do you want to win again?
Well, I want to win again, but if I have now 2 straight playoff runs where my season has ended
I get it.
And I'm blaming Val for it, I'm going to roll the dice a third time, knowing in my mind, right? I'm not saying I feel this way, but some folks do, that if you feel that Val sabotaged 2 playoff runs, you want to bring him back with the understanding it could easily happen again, and that'll sabotage a 3rd playoff run?
You signed the contract.
Do you want to do that?
You signed the contract. The problem is that he's got 6 years left on his deal, and there's no way around it. That's guaranteed money. He's getting it. And so it just depends upon, are the Avs offsetting it because they moved him, so they're paying a small portion of it, which they don't want to do. Having dead money on the books in the NHL, I'd be curious to know, actually, now that I say that, and I might have to go back and look, but I'd be curious to know how much dead money a team has won with since the hard cap got implemented. It can't be very much because you need almost a full roster, if not, you need like 95% of the pieces to get it done these days. So here's what I'll say.
What would you do? What would you do with Val?
Give him another shot.
Just give him another shot, huh?
I would. You don't have because I don't think it's possible to win without him. Because I don't think it's possible to eat dead money and win without him. Because that's only half the battle. Getting rid of him is half the battle. Then you got to replace him. And you're not doing that in the open market. You're not doing it through the draft. So now, what, you just want a dead weight in the middle of MacKinnon and Makar's prime? They have no choice. The only get out of jail.
I'd buy him out.
And you'd sit there with $6 million.
Yes, I'd eat it because
you're not going to win it.
Because, well, at some point I have to think about
you're not going to win.
I have to think about the players in that room. I got to think about the fans out there. And the understanding that every time a playoff run begins, I'm holding my breath, wondering when the other Val shoe is going to fall. And you know what? I think it's worth the money you got to eat
to have
that peace of mind that I don't have to worry about the other shoe falling.
To not win again. Would you get rid of Val if it meant you never won again?
Why can't I win again?
Because you're taking a $6 million number at least for the next 3 years, and maybe never again, but at least for the next 3 years. Constructing a contender with that much dead money would be, in my eyes, almost impossible, if not impossible.
But you're saying that if you want to win again,
unless you find like young players that come in and are producing at like 25, 30 goal seasons and are legit playoff dudes right away, that you have outperforming their contracts.
How about I meet you halfway? How about I meet you halfway? Here's kind of the
you don't win for the next 3 years.
No, here's kind of the beauty with Val. He's got 1 strike left.
Yeah.
And then I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Roll the dice one more time with him. With the understanding that if he screws up, it's his 4th strike,
and then
he's
you
gone
get the
for a
contract
year
back anyway.
And then at that point, you probably can void the contract.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
I think you do immediately if he were to apply for reinstatement, come back, and then test positive again or fail again. I think almost instantly.
Yes,
that it
because
gets
I think that's kind of built in with the idea of the player assistance program. Look, we understand we got to give our players multiple chances at this, but even the players will agree there comes a time where you run out of chances,
right?
And that the club has to have some sort of recourse, and that if you're talking about 4 strikes here, then at that point, okay, the team's within their rights to void the contract.
And I don't think you can cut him now while he's in stage 3 of the
you
program.
can't. No,
and you can't trade him now. So you would have to wait for him to rehabilitate, to then apply for reinstatement, to get approved, to come back and then say, hey, look, we want to be done here. And then other teams would have all the leverage because they would know that you just wanted to move on.
All right, so if that's the case then, if we're looking at strictly this way, and this is kind of a cold-hearted way of looking at it, then the Avalanche are in a no-lose situation. Because either he gets his life together, comes back, and stays clean, and you get all the benefits of Val as a player, or he screws up again, and at that point, you're able to get rid of his contract. Okay.
You don't have a choice.
So if that's the case, then
you just don't have a choice.
You roll the dice.
But that's the problem that's only
part of it. But the problem is that you go into next season with the idea that we're going to roll the dice one more time with this guy, but with that anvil hanging over our head, knowing that if he does screw up again, based on the last 2 years, we maybe have a third year in our championship window with this core that maybe gets sabotaged again.
What do you want to do? That's where I'm at. Like, you either don't win for 3 years, and you haven't even brought up Landeskog. Like, that's just Val. That's why I say what happened with Val, it has such overreaching implications on the future of this team because you already don't know what's happening with another top six, another $7 million cap hit. You're talking about $13 million in your salary who you've allocated to 2 guys who you need to consistently contribute. Trying to win with this is not easy.
So basically, let's boil it down to brass tacks, okay? You're going to next year rolling the dice with both Val and Landeskog.
You go into next year having no idea how it's going to turn out.
But you got to roll the dice.
You have to. You don't have a choice.
Because it's just the sheer amount of money they make.
6 years for Val, 5 years left for Gabe. All guaranteed.
Hope it works out.
I mean, what else can you do? Like, if you cut Val, you've got to eat that money. It's not like, oh, we cut him, we got rid of him, let's just go sign another guy.
No. This isn't the NFL.
You can't do that.
No, right.
So, you're kind of
stuck. And the same thing with Gabe.
Same thing with Gabe, which is exactly why the only out now, we talked about Val failing in stage 4, right? And then being done so.
Right.
Well, for Gabe, the only way you get out of that is if he medically retires.
Right.
That's it.
And he's not going to walk away from $35 million.
No.
I mean, you could do some kind of buyout.
Unless he can't play. Unless he just can't stay on the ice. And for my question for Gabe would be, if for some reason, and God forbid this round of rehab over the summer, right? Because Bednar said, he goes, we got to a point where it was probably understood that it wasn't going to happen this year, so we started to slow it down and be more deliberate and intentional.
Which I think we all kind of saw that going that way.
We assumed that without them saying it. That was the smarter move to get them ready for next year.
And I wish they had been a little bit more...
It would have been the way to go.
Honest up front. They were kind of dangling the idea that, hey, Gabe might come back. And I thought that was a little bit unfair to
disingenuous.
A little unfair to the fans out there who were really kind of buying into the idea Gabe could come back. And I don't think they ever really felt that they could. But this way, it allows him a nice, slow, methodical summer to just build up and be ready to go come camp and then see how it goes.
And if it doesn't work this time for him, you're going to go through another operation. I mean, look, Gabe is like a couple of years younger than I am.
Right.
And in my position, I mean, I'll be 32 in November. And in my position, I wouldn't want to pack my career in. Like, that would be impossible to go, especially if I were a professional athlete, to just accept that my body had betrayed me. I'd be doing everything I could to get back. So I would understand if God forbid, he had another setback and still tried.
Then you're doing another 18-month window.
I know. And I feel horrible for the man. Like, I do. I feel awful for him. And if anybody from the Avalanche is watching this, I hope they make Gabe available this summer to the media so we can talk to him. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to. I'd like to know where his head's at. But my point is, you have the uncertainty, and Bednar addressed it after the loss in Game 6. You have the uncertainty with Val. You have the uncertainty with Gabe. Well, those are 2 of your most important roles. Your captain and the guy who plays in every situation.
Yeah.
So next year...
With like a combined $14 million on your cap, too, which is...
Next year, to me, feels like a total roll of the dice, and which is why I brought up on my show the other day that Chris, Joe, guys, I've given you a lot of heat the last couple of years when I didn't like your moves and lauded you when I did. Pressure's off from me now. Like, they have one of the toughest jobs in hockey this summer to figure out how to potentially build a contender. And I think the only way you could possibly go about it is just by operating under the assumption that come fall, Landeskog will be back to a full go, or at least whatever that looks like, and that come November, Val will be reinstated, and you build from there. And if it doesn't work out, then it's probably another burned year.
Right. Okay, well, yeah, no.
I don't know what else to say.
No, hey,
That's why we appreciated it in 22.
And you know what? And we're trying to figure out, but Bednar was asked that same question, and he's like, honestly, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, he was honest about it. He said,
it's a huge challenge.
He said that'll be up to the front office, but as I sit here right now, honestly, I'm not sure how we handle that and how we build a team around those two and those two question marks. He said, I don't know. So we'll see.
Let me ask you about the rest of these free agents.
Yeah, real quick.
Trenin.
Guys I'd like to bring back?
Yeah. Because we did this the last 2 years.
I like him if the number's right, sure.
Okay. Cogliano.
If he wants to come back, he's welcome.
Agreed. Jack Johnson.
Same thing. I don't think we're talking about big numbers here.
Agreed. Duhaime.
Yeah.
Meh. I mean, they liked him. He's a younger guy.
Yeah.
I think he could fit and maybe eat some minutes for you next year. So I think he'll probably be back.
I wouldn't overextend to bring him back.
Drouin.
I'd love to bring him back.
You've got about $15 million in cap space right now, as far as I'm concerned, before we even talk about Val. And you're missing Trenin, Cogliano, Duhaime, Kiviranta, Johnson, Jones is on there.
Yeah, re-sign Mittelstadt.
Mittelstadt's on there. And then, am I missing one? And then Sean Walker.
Yeah.
Which you're not going to be able to bring back Sean Walker, I don't think. I think Sean Walker's going to get $5 to $6 million. If I were the Toronto Maple Leafs, he would be one of my first calls this offseason.
Sure, offensive-minded defenseman.
And he could play in a top four. I think he kind of goes to waste here, in my opinion, a little bit with Gerard already here. So out of all those guys, you've got about, I think at the end of the day, you're going to probably have to give 5 to Mittelstadt if my math was right. So that probably leaves you like 10 to fill out the bottom of your roster. And then what are you going to do with Drouin? So we'll see. Maybe they make the numbers work. Maybe they don't. But next year, as this year and as last year did, comes down to the health of 90.
And by the way, lurking
Mikko's deal, and you know what? They'll probably have to give him the extension this summer,
right?
Which means that he probably goes. I think he's 9.1. He's got one more year left. I think he probably goes to 11 at least.
And does Taves' new deal kick in this year?
Yeah. But the way they juggled those numbers, I think that's eaten up somewhere else. I'd have to go back and look through it. But I don't envy the job that Chris McFarland.
You're talking about some big tickets here. Big tickets, and
it's just going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't envy the job that Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic are going to have to do now, because there are situations, unfortunately, outside of their control that are very hard to navigate.
And to try to build a roster with two big numbers like that with Val and Gabe, that's
not just a
tough.
a roster that can win.
Yeah, no, because you're right, they're still in that championship window,
right?
And it's just it. And I'll leave you with a final thought. I know that there is a feeling out there of, hey, it didn't work out this year. Hey, we'll get Gabe back, or hey, Val, we'll figure things out. I just want to stress that championship windows don't come along often. And when they are there and when they are open, you got to take advantage of them, because it's not going to last forever.
This is why I was so mad last year.
And that's why when you lose a series like this, or you lose the one to Seattle, you can't just say, oh, well, the better team won, we'll come back better and be better next year. There has to be that feeling, not only from the team, but also as you as fans. There has to be that urgency. Hey, this thing's not going to last forever. We got to capitalize on it now. We don't want this window to shut, and then we're left sitting what could have been. So just
that's
something.
Why they tried to go all in this year. But was it all in, or was it desperate?
You and I disagree on that. I thought the moves, I thought they were good moves. Okay. I thought they were good, solid moves. On paper, but with the idea that okay, they tried, they made the moves, they went for it. Now it's up to the players to deliver, and unfortunately, I just don't think the players delivered enough. Not only their best players, but also some of the role players. They just didn't deliver enough.
Yeah, as I said after the deadline, they gave they gave their guys a chance, and they probably did right by what we hope to be is the Hart winner in Nathan MacKinnon, and. And Cale and Mikko and those guys who've been busting their tails, they want an opportunity to win. And the front office did the best they could, in my opinion, to give those guys a chance to win during the year. It didn't work out. And unfortunately, Mike, sometimes when you put all your chips in the middle of the table, buddy, and I've got, 2 pair and you show me 3 aces, then I'm leaving with nothing with my pockets turned inside out and going, well, hey, at least I played.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, want to thank everybody who was part of this podcast. Matt, you did a great job. Thank you. Behind the scenes, and thank you for filling in.
No, you weren't talking about me?
I wasn't talking about
him?
Matt with 2 T's behind the camera, Matt with 1 T here on camera, some of the guests that we had throughout the course of the year, but mostly thank you to all of you who tuned in, loyal watchers of this program, Avalanche fans, so hardcore about this hockey team, and really appreciate your passion throughout the course of the year. Any big news comes up, any big moves with the Avs, we'll pop in with a special, podcast during the course of the summer. But for now, we're done. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs as much as you can, and we'll see you again on the Mile High Hockey Podcast.